We all make mistakes. Some are small, some are big, and some are much, much bigger. Usually, the bigger the mistake, the more money you have to pay for your stupidity. That price could be a Bugatti Veyron supercar, a nuclear power plant in Japan, or even a hard drive containing $500 million lying somewhere in a landfill in the UK. Now is the time for Taka to review the most expensive mistakes in history and try not to laugh at others when we could be even more foolish. Don't forget that you own a supercar. Guys, if I owned a supercar, I would definitely be very aware of the girls staring at me. Who's your daddy? Who's your daddy? I mean, supercars are incredibly eye-catching and easily recognizable from any angle on the street. They are usually low, loud, and look bizarrely out of place compared to any other vehicle. However, this guy wasn't aware of how attention-grabbing his car was, and perhaps he wouldn't have made the mistake that cost him $2.2 million. In November 2009, this man was driving a Bugatti Veyron, one of the most expensive supercars in the world, priced at over $1 million. 15 years ago, and one of only 15 in the United States at that time. An accident occurred. The supercar plunged into a body of water in eastern Texas, damaging the engine and the entire car as it hit the water's surface, which was only about a meter deep. Fortunately, this guy had insurance, and when the claim was filed, he stated in the reasons section that a pelican suddenly flew across the windshield, causing him to lose visibility and the car to plunge into the lake. An unavoidable accident. Sounds reasonable, right? The insurance company nodded in agreement and was ready to compensate him with $2.2 million. However, a happy ending seems to exist only in fairy tales. This guy forgot that he was sitting in a Bugatti Veyron, which is enough to catch anyone's eye, and they might even record it. Another passenger in a different car at that exact moment actually raised their phone, recorded the dream supercar of their life. I have to blur the scene of it plunging into the lake, guys, or else YouTube will give me a hard time. But have you guessed the ending? Yes, there wasn't any magical pelican here. And perhaps that imaginary pelican took away $2.2 million in insurance money, as well as the guy's entire future. It wasn't until 2015 that the car owner was convicted of insurance fraud conspiracy and sentenced to 3 years in prison, even having to pay back $600,000 to the insurance company. Too bad for the ice cream team. When the rich also cry. Remember the year 2020? Yes, that was the COVID-19 pandemic. It all felt like a dream, right? Everything from quarantines, nasal swabs, tests, to those terrifying days. Almost every social class was affected. But perhaps, except for the rich. And that made the story in 2020 quite satisfying, when even the rich cried. In March of that year, a massive superyacht named Nora of Crete, over 70 meters long, docked at a Greek port, with 11 luxurious cabins, a cinema, a hot tub, and room for a maximum of 18 passengers and 16 crew members. This yacht was truly a money-draining monster, and not meant for the masses. But with its level of luxury, it required frequent maintenance. So, they pulled it out of the water. However, the team in charge did not secure it properly, and as they continued to pull it up, it tilted entirely to the right side. If you're thinking like I am, that this yacht doesn't look too bad. It's simple, just pull it to the right. No, my friend, you will definitely feel seasick, knowing that this yacht is worth $70 million. And the cost to restore it is not cheap at all. Mistake at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. A few $1,000,000, or even a few $100 million, is just a drop in the bucket compared to this fatal mistake. Let's turn back time to 2011 with me. A 9-magnitude earthquake, the strongest ever recorded in human history, occurred in Japan, causing a massive tsunami. How massive was it? Well, it was about 40 meters high, equivalent to a 12-story building. Such a terrifying tsunami wiped out an entire section of Japan's coastline. Unfortunately, that area included the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The system at this nuclear power plant was very smart, automatically detecting the earthquake and shutting down 3 of the 4 operating nuclear reactors. However, the problem was that these nuclear reactors still had an extremely high temperature, around 600 degrees Celsius, and therefore the emergency generators had to be turned on immediately to cool the reactor cores. The particularly unfortunate point here is that at this very moment, a tsunami, not even of the highest magnitude, only about 14 meters high, struck and flooded the power plant, destroying 31 out of 33 emergency generators. The nuclear core cooling program came to a halt amidst the terrifying screams of the workers. The temperature in the nuclear reactor suddenly soared to nearly 3,000 degrees Celsius, causing a nuclear explosion, along with a deadly hydrogen and petroleum gas explosion. 6 days later, somewhere around 9.8 times 10 to the power of 15 becquerels of radioactive material had contaminated the entire surrounding area. If you can't quite grasp the magnitude of this number, a becquerel is a unit used to measure radioactivity. 9.8 times 10 to the power of 15 is equivalent to nearly 20% of what the Chernobyl nuclear disaster caused. You don't see where the mistake is, right? And you assume this must surely be an unavoidable natural disaster. But no. In fact, scientists had warned the plant operators that this disaster was very likely to occur. They emphasized the importance of emergency generators and the risk because they were built and placed in areas that were too low-lying. A tsunami hitting them could easily wipe everything out. But the operators at the Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, simply scoffed and sarcastically remarked that there would never be a tsunami big enough to do that. Could it be that the scientists were just too accurate with their predictions? Or was Tokyo Electric Power Company just incredibly unlucky when the tsunami actually hit and they had to pay the price with $2.2 billion in damages? In addition, the effort to clean up the nuclear radioactive material was even more costly by many times. Even now, 13 years later, the disaster will still take another 30 years and around $76 billion to clean up completely. The emissions issue. Are you aware of the most disgusting emissions scandal in the automotive industry? You might be quite surprised. As you can see here, this is a massive Volkswagen parking lot in California. This massive piece of land is about 54 hectares, exactly the same as the long coastline. Of course, it's just to park 21,000 cars. Are they new? Yes. Are they valuable? Of course. And they still work well. So, can they be driven on the road? Absolutely not. That is truly an insane waste. Back in 1963, the United States enacted a law requiring all vehicles on the road not to exceed a certain level of emissions into the environment. But by the 2000s, Volkswagen suddenly realized that their new diesel engine models could not comply with the emissions law. However, instead of striving to comply with the law and limit emissions, Volkswagen decided to take a much bolder step. Volkswagen installed emissions-limiting software on over 500,000 diesel engine cars in the United States and about 10.5 million more worldwide, allowing them to bypass the emission standards set by the Environmental Protection Agency. The devices Volkswagen installed were detected by the agency on the steering and throttle systems to switch to a separate operating mode, which is the real-world testing. In test mode, the cars fully complied with all the emission levels set by the standards. But when driving on the actual road, the computer switches to a separate operating mode, and the cheating software begins to take effect. It significantly alters the fuel pressure, timing, and exhaust gas recirculation. Although the separate mode can provide higher power, it is more polluting by emitting heavy nitrogen oxides, which are up to 40 times higher than the regulated emission limits and are carcinogenic to the lungs. This was a disaster for Volkswagen, forcing them to buy back nearly 350,000 cars worldwide and dump them in massive lots like the one mentioned in California. Along with that came fines, compensation, and reparations. Can you guess how much? $10 million? $100 million? Or maybe $1 billion? No, the number we're talking about is $33.3 billion US. Wow, perhaps Volkswagen's disaster management team will never dare to cheat again.